precisely 1:15. This is the news on Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. News is edited by Lakshman Fonseca and read by Sabrina Zawahir. The headlines. Department of Community Medicine says that we are only seeing the beginning of the Delta variant. The lockdown would not be effective if people do not behave responsibly, State Minister Fernando Pillay warns. The government assures there will be adequate supply of essential food items with price stability. The Health Ministry is to probe into the incident where a 12-year-old child was administered with a COVID-19 vaccine. The COVID-19 virus is spreading to a great extent in Colombo City. The Jaffna Teaching Hospital performs its first kidney transplant operation successfully. And in world news, the situation outside Kabul airport continues to worsen. Now the local news in detail. Head Department of Community Medicine Professor Manjusi Veerasinghe says COVID-19 had reached the community spread stage in some parts of the country. He says the western province, some parts of the northern province and in the Gaul and Mathura districts are in this critical stage. Professor Veerasinghe said that there was no point in talking about the official figures or planning based on the numbers at their disposal. Making assumptions based on these numbers will only lead to trouble, he said. Professor Veerasinghe said that we are only seeing the beginning. We must not dupe ourselves into thinking that we are near the end of the crisis created by Delta. He is also involved in the 904 SMS-based system to manage home quarantine COVID-19 patients. He said the extension of the lockdown for another week had given the government and health officials time to decide what they want to achieve during the lockdown. Having objectives and benchmarks were important because it showed what the government wanted to achieve with the lockdown and gave everyone an opportunity to think beyond the lockdown, the professor said. Professor Veerasinghe also involved in the 904 SMS-based system to manage home quarantine COVID-19 patients. The lockdown would not be effective if people do not behave responsibly and fail to follow health practices. State Minister Sudashini Fernando Pillay, after an event in Colombo, said that looking at the lockdown, the country is not the only solution to stem the spike in COVID cases. She says people's cooperation is vital in the endeavor to combat the disease. Dr. Fernando Pillay added, public should adhere to health practices such as wearing face masks and especially to refrain from visiting crowded places. The minister also said if people behave responsibly, spread of the disease could be prevented. She said a large number of people are receiving treatment in hospitals and some are under home quarantine. State Minister requested people, including the Sri Lankan migrant workers, to contribute in any possible means to facilitate the treatment of patients. She added that we need the support of the people in the country and from the expatriates. The government assures there will be adequate supply of essential food items with price stability. The Trade Ministry says it will ensure the supply of essential commodities and to stabilize prices in the local market. The government is also considering making some key decisions regarding the essential commodities like rice, sugar, dal, milk powder and wheat flour in the coming week. The Trade Ministry said the government had observed that the intermediary traders and importers are making massive profits capitalizing on the COVID-19 situation in the country. The Health Ministry had called for an immediate probe into the incident where a 12-year-old child was administered with a COVID-19 vaccine. Health Promotion Bureau Director Dr. Ranjit Batuwanthudava said the child was administered without an approval of the Health Ministry. He said necessary action would be taken against the officers concerned after receiving the report of the investigation. The Health Ministry says studies were in progress on the vaccination of children below 12 years of age and added that no policy decision has been taken so far to vaccinate those below 12 years of age. Dr. Batuwanthudava added the target group of vaccination in Sri Lanka is 30 and above, and those below 30 were vaccinated on certain occasions, such as factory workers. The COVID-19 virus is spreading to a great extent in Colombo City. Chief Medical Officer of the Colombo Municipal Council, Dr. Ruan Vijayamuni, says that the average daily reported COVID-19 cases from Colombo City is around 140 at the moment. He says that CMC conducts more than 600 PCR tests and around 100 rapid antigen tests daily. Less than 50% of PCR and around 15% of antigen tests are found to be positive, he said. He added around 30% of the reported COVID-19 patients within Colombo City are ones with the Delta variant. He also said that the success in Colombo may be due to the vaccination program carried out by the CMC. However, he said there may be only 10% of the population in Colombo City who have not taken even a single jab to this date. This news is brought to you by Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. Continuing local news, the Jaffna Teaching Hospital has performed its first kidney transplant operation successfully. Director of the Jaffna Teaching Hospital, Dr. Sri Bhavandaraja, said the operation performed at the Jaffna Teaching Hospital last Thursday was a great success. Speaking to the media, he said this predicts the capacity of the hospital to carry out such critical operations. He said Jaffna Teaching Hospital is ready to organ transplant operations to be performed on critically ill patients at the hospital in the future. 4,561 coronavirus cases have been detected in Sri Lanka yesterday in the country, raising the number of confirmed infections to 416,931. The epidemiology unit of the Ministry of Health said 55,369 persons are currently receiving treatment for coronavirus at several facilities across the country. 2,122 persons who recovered from COVID-19 were discharged from hospitals yesterday, raising the number of recoveries in the country to 353,191. 3,340 suspected COVID-19 cases are also under medical observation at present. Sri Lanka's coronavirus death toll is currently at 8,371. Another 214 COVID-19 related fatalities have been confirmed in Sri Lanka, the most in a single day, raising the coronavirus death toll in the country to 8,371. The Director General of Health Services in a statement said all 214 deaths occurred on last Thursday. The Health Ministry suggests making available self-diagnosis kits for the public to test whether they are infected with COVID virus. Health Promotion Bureau Director Dr. Ranjit Batuanthudawa said the Health Ministry and Laboratory Services Unit of the Health Ministry had also paid their attention to make available self-diagnosis kits. Dr. Batuanthudawa said these self-diagnosis kits are widely being used in foreign countries and expressed hope that the facility could be introduced in Sri Lanka too. He said if it is introduced to Sri Lanka, it would be beneficial as people can get themselves tested being at home. Sri Lankan economy was in turmoil even before the Easter attack. Former VC of the University of Kelaniya and former professor of the Faculty of Economic, Professor Sunanda Madhumabandara says regime change occurred in 2015 was the major reason behind the reason. He says according to the central bank reports, Sri Lanka economy has shown its healthy and significant growth during the period from 2010 to 2014. Professor Sunanda Madhumabandara made these remarks at the Subharati program conducted by the SLBC this morning. With that, we conclude the local news. The main news story follows.
The main news story is brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
State Minister Sudashini Fernandez says the lockdown would not be effective if people do not behave responsibly and fail to follow health practices. She said that locking down the country is not the only solution to stem the spike in COVID cases. She said people's cooperation is vital in the endeavor to combat the disease. Dr. Fernando Pillay added the public should adhere to health practices such as wearing face masks and especially to refrain from visiting crowded places. The minister also said if people behave responsibly, spread of the disease could be prevented. That was our main news story.
The main news story was brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
Taking a look at Watchlight, patients with Delta variant begin showing symptoms around 5 days after infection. The head of the Department of Immunology and Molecular Biology at Sri Jawadanapura University, Dr. Chandima Jivandara, says on average people began having symptoms 5 to 8 days after infection with Delta. He added, understanding the duration of the viral shedding is therefore vital in the effort to implement effective public health measures to control the spread of the virus. That came to you in Watchlight. A bulletin of world news follows. The headlines of the world news. The situation outside Kabul airport continues to worsen. Some Afghan refugee children are arriving in the US without family members. UK government is ready to ban single-use plastic cutlery. Now the world news in detail. The situation outside Kabul airport continues to worsen every day as the August 31st deadline for US troops to withdraw from Afghanistan comes close. Even after the multiple blasts outside the airport, thousands of Afghans have returned to the airport to fight a hopeless battle to flee out of the country. Meanwhile, prices of essential items like food and water have skyrocketed near the Kabul airport premises as the area gets more crowded every day. According to Reuters, water bottles available outside the airport are being sold for $40 and a plate of rice for $100. Some refugee children who have been evacuated from Afghanistan are arriving on American soil without family members. Department of Health and Human Services officials told CBS News U.S. authorities had sent them to government shelters. The number of unaccompanied children from Afghanistan will likely to be increased as thousands of Afghan evacuees arrive from American military bases in the Middle East and Europe. U.S. refugee agency officials have told shelter operators that work with the government to prepare for the arrival of more unaccompanied minors from Afghanistan. UK government has announced plans to ban single-use plastic cutlery, plates and polystyrene. Ministers said the move would help to reduce litter and cut the amount of plastic waste in oceans. A consultation on the policy will launch in the autumn, although the government has not ruled out including other items in the ban. Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland already have plans to ban single-use plastic cutlery, and the European Union brought in a similar ban in July, putting ministers in England under pressure to take similar action. According to government figures, each person in England uses 18 single-use plastic plates and 37 single-use plastic items of cutlery every year. That ends World News. Prior to concluding, the headlines of the World News once again. The situation outside Kabul airport continues to worsen. Some Afghan refugee children are arriving in the US without family members. UK government is ready to ban single-use plastic cutlery. With that, we conclude the World News. Next up is the Development News.
Development News is brought to you by Quality Matters Than Price. So as an engineer, I recommend Melva RB500. It's made with virgin billets using the latest technology. Melva RB500, number one in Sri Lanka. Truly Sri Lankan.
Institute of Nanotechnology Limited has introduced a post-harvest technology that scavenges the ethylene hormone that causes fruit and vegetable ripening. The institute says this innovation enables prolonged shelf life and longer storage for fruits and vegetables, preventing spoilage. Slintech is a nano and advanced technology research and development center in Sri Lanka, set up by the government of Sri Lanka along with private sector partners. Slintech is also the first public-private research institute in the country. Slintech offers number of science and technology-based innovative products and services to clients. That was development news. Next up is the sports news.
Development news was brought to you by Quality Matters Than Price. So as an engineer, I recommend Melba RB500. It's made with virgin billets using the latest technology. Melba RB500, number one in Sri Lanka. Truly Sri Lankan.
In sports news, former captain Michael Vaughan says England must be patient in their pursuit of victory over India in the third test at Headingley. India reached 215-2 on day 3, a huge turnaround from their first innings, 78 all out, but still 139 short of making England bat again. Vaughan said history tells you that India aren't going to win it. He added, England are way ahead. They should win convincingly. It might just take longer than they thought. After England racked up 432, India were 354 behind on first innings, and no team has overturned such a large deficit to win a test. Joe Root said he's without a win in their past 7 tests, including a final day capitulation to lose the second test against India at Lord's. England just have to be patient, Vaughan told BBC Test Match Special. They are not used to winning, and when that is the case, you can sometimes panic. That ends sports news.
Contributory deposit of ₹1,000 from NSB when your child enters grade 1. Open a Hapan Children's Savings account for your kid today. Higher interest. Conditions apply. Business news. Sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
The Central Bank of Sri Lanka expects to begin the rollout and implementation of a transport payment card from next month. The bank plans to launch the card in conjunction with the relevant transportation authorities. The payment card will be issued on the currently operational National Card Scheme. Accordingly, users will be able to use the payment card for retail payments and transportation with their JCB Lanka Pay branded cards. Central Bank Director Payments and Settlements Dharmasiri Kumarathunga noted that the long-delayed implementation of digital payments for transportation would begin next month. That ends business news.
Business news. Sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money. Contributory deposit of ₹1,000 from NSB when your child enters grade 1. Open a Hapan Children's Savings account for your kid today. Higher interest. Conditions apply.
Economic news, courtesy of...
Saving money isn't easy when you have responsibility. That's why we promise to give you the best returns and guarantee on your investment. LOLC Finance Fixed Deposits. Maximize your savings. LOLC Finance PLC, incorporated on the 13th of December 2001, is rated SLA stable by ICRA Lanka Limited and is licensed by the Monetary Board of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka under the Finance Business Act number 42 of 2011.
Sri Lanka's farmers are expecting more time to learn about organic alternatives and their use. Farmers believe it is a good idea to drop chemicals, a study has found. However, farmers say they will not be able to obtain expected harvest initially when chemical fertilizer banned. Over 90% of the farmers surveyed by Verite Research said they are currently using chemical fertilizer, and about 85% expected output falls if they cannot use them. About 44% of the farmers said they had already reduced the use of chemical fertilizer. Verite Research had conducted the survey via telephone in July 2021 that consisted 1,042 farmers from all 9 provinces in the country. That ends economic news.
Saving money isn't easy when you have responsibility. That's why we promise to give you the best returns and guarantee on your investment. LOLC Finance Fixed Deposits. Maximize your savings. LOLC Finance PLC, incorporated on the 13th of December 2001, is rated SLA stable by ICRA Lanka Limited and is licensed by the Monetary Board of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka under the Finance Business Act number 42 of 2011.
Weather report was sponsored by
Dialogue, in partnership with the Ministry of Education, introduces Nanasa, a trilingual educational mobile app with video-based lessons for grade 1 to A-levels. Now your child can study with ease on your mobile with no subscription fee.
Finally, it's a look at the weather report. The Met Department says the sun is going to be directly over the latitudes of Sri Lanka from today to September 7th. They said the sun was going to be directly over Sri Lanka on the apparent southward relative motion of it. The department added the nearest areas of Sri Lanka over which the sun is overhead today are Sangupidi and Palali in Jaffna at about 12:11 noon. That was the weather report.
Weather report was sponsored by
Dialogue, in partnership with the Ministry of Education, introduces Nanasa, a trilingual educational mobile app with video-based lessons for grade 1 to A-levels. Now your child can study with ease on your mobile with no subscription fee.
Prior to concluding this bulletin of news, the headlines once again. Department of Community Medicine says that we are only seeing the beginning of the Delta variant. The lockdown would not be effective if people do not behave responsibly, State Minister Fernando Pillay warns. The government assures there will be adequate supply of essential food items with price stability. The Health Ministry is to probe into the incident where a 12-year-old child was administered with COVID-19 vaccine. The COVID-19 virus is spreading to a great extent in Colombo City. The Jaffna Teaching Hospital performs its first kidney transplant operation successfully. With that, we conclude the news.